This is the Titanic, the ship that claimed the lives of 1,500 people, and these are the most mysterious findings that have been brought up from the depths. From a $2 million violin to enigmatic keys to the ship itself. And at the end, you'll see a binocular that might have been the cause of the tragedy. Where does all this come from if they can't even raise the Titanic itself? Rare and dangerous trinkets often surface at black auctions. And here is the first intriguing item. Picture this. Deep in the ocean depths, among the remains of the majestic Titanic, a mysterious object was discovered. A golden bracelet with the inscription, Amy. This small detail, found a century after the shipwreck and sold at an auction, carries an indelible imprint of history. The bracelet, crafted with elegance and delicacy with a gold chain, silver elements, and diamonds forming the name Amy. Who is this mysterious Amy? Perhaps she was part of the crew, Amanda? Or one of the second-class passengers, Miss Amanda or Emilia? Or maybe the bracelet was intended as a gift? The thing is, among the passengers, there was no girl with that name and wealth to possess such a bracelet. The intrigue deepens with the fact that this bracelet is just one of many treasures raised from the ocean floor. Titanic carried incalculable riches. Gold, diamonds, jewelry worth over $200 million by today's standards, and each found item is not just a valuable object, it's a piece of history forever submerged. It's a pity that these items can't speak. We can only speculate on whose they were and where they came from. In 2006 in the UK, a violin was found that was played by one of the musicians from the legendary Titanic Orchestra. They played until the very end, providing comfort to the passengers in the tragic moments of the shipwreck. This violin belonged to Wallace Hartley, the violinist whose courage and bravery will be remembered forever. Authenticating the instrument found in his frozen hands took years. After confirming its authenticity, the violin was sent to Hartley's fiancée along with other personal belongings. The violin lay in the salty waters of the Atlantic Ocean, making it impossible to play, but it miraculously retained its shape. Its value lies not in being crafted by the hands of a great master like Antonio Stradivari, but in the tragic story it carries. The violin was exhibited in museums and exhibitions before being sold at an auction for $1.7 million in 2013. It's not just an instrument, it's a symbol of resilience and courage in the face of inevitable tragedy. And as mediums and psychics say, it carries an enormous otherworldly charge, though with such a history, I wouldn't be surprised. And while the tragedy of the Titanic reaches us only as echoes and interesting stories on the internet, its wreckage site still attracts misfortune. I must tell you about an incident you might have already heard of. Just recently, the submersible Titan, which was taking an excursion to the remains of the Titanic, it remained at the bottom forever. Cruel irony or fate or something else? They set out to witness the tragedy and ended up becoming a part of it. But the story becomes even more mysterious when you recall Morgan Robertson's 1898 work Futility, The Wreck of the Titan. This novella describes a gigantic, state-of-the-art cruise liner that sinks after colliding with an iceberg. Sounds incredibly familiar, doesn't it? The Titanic, its tragic fate, and then the submersible Titan, following in its footsteps. What happened to the submersible Titan is shrouded in mystery. Just like Robertson's ability to predict events that occurred 16 years later, the mystical aura continues to hover over the cold waters, where the remains of this horrifying monster lie, claiming the lives of 1,513 people. But let's move on to the grim findings that were still brought up from that place. At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, pocket watches were found, which until recently were considered the most expensive and unique artifacts of the Titanic. These watches belonged to Edmund Stone, a first-class steward aboard the ship, the man who held the keys to the first-class cabins. Edmund was part of the elite service staff, but alas, did not survive that fateful night. Interestingly, his pocket watch stopped at 2:16 a.m. just 4 minutes before the Titanic went under. Researchers speculate that at that moment, Edmund found himself in the cold waters of the ocean. This discovery, carrying echoes of the tragedy, was sold at an auction for an amount ranging from $146,000 to $154,000. An incredible price for pocket watches a century old and frozen in time. They don't just tell the time, they bear witness to thousands of deaths, forever frozen in a sign of respect and mourning. In January 1910, two friends, Henry Sethall and Howard Irving, set off from America on a round-the-world journey. They planned to return home in 1912, but fate had other plans. In mid-1911, the friends parted ways, agreeing to meet in England in April 1912 to board the Titanic and complete their journey back to the USA. Henry arrived in England first, carrying Howard's suitcase, and waited for him. When it became clear that Howard was delayed, Henry alone boarded the Titanic. Unfortunately, he became one of the victims of the disaster. Howard, according to one version, managed to avoid the fate of his friend due to an unexpected circumstance. A day before departure, he got into a fight and decided to postpone the trip to recover from the injuries. Fate, it seems, spared him from perishing with the Titanic. The intrigue deepens as only in 1993, during another expedition to the Titanic, Howard's suitcase containing his personal belongings was found and brought to the surface. Initially, detectives couldn't understand whose belongings these were since the guy wasn't listed among the passengers on board. But later, they managed to unravel this fortunate coincidence. And this image, visible at the Titanic wreckage site, gives me a very eerie impression. Thousands of pairs of shoes scattered around the remains of the ship at the bottom of the cold Atlantic Ocean speak more than words can express. Each of them is a silent witness to lives cut short on that fateful night from April 14 to 15, 1912. The clothing and bodies of the passengers have long disappeared, decomposing in the salty sea water. But leather shoes, thanks to their unique properties, resisted the destructive effects of time and water. These shoes and boots are the last remnants of 1,513 human lives tragically cut short that night. Each of them may mark the place where the life of one of the passengers ended. Too much footwear, too many untold stories and unrealized dreams. Horrifying. Well, I can't ignore the topic of the letters found on the Titanic. After all, they were living people with their experiences, tragedies, and interests. It's like going through someone else's phone, reading their correspondence. The letters from the Titanic are windows to the past through which we can glimpse into the most intimate moments of that dreadful night. These letters give us a unique opportunity to feel the atmosphere on board, learn about the details of passengers' lives, and their thoughts in the last hours before the catastrophe. Two letters written in the last hours of the liner's life are especially valuable. The first belongs to banker Washington Dodge, a first-class passenger. It describes the final moments on the ship, including the orchestra playing and the situation on the deck just before the ship split in half. Thanks to Dodge surviving, he was able to share this letter with the public, providing a valuable source of information for researchers. The second letter was written by Adolf Salzfeld, founder of a pharmaceutical and cosmetic company. He set off to America to expand his business, bringing along a collection of perfumes. In his message to his wife, Adolf talks about his impressions of the Titanic's interiors, the restaurant menu, and various details of the journey. Like Washington Dodge, Salzfeld survived and shared his letter with the public. Thoughts of the other passengers, however, remain in the darkness of the cold depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The story of Marion Manuel is full of tragedy and random events that ultimately proved fatal. Marion originally planned to travel on another ship, the Majestic, but fate decided otherwise. Due to a miners' strike in Britain, she had to change her plans and book a spot on the Titanic, thinking it would get her to America faster. But sadly, this voyage became the last for many, including Marion. She became one of the numerous victims of this ill-fated journey. However, her name did not sync with the ship. It was discovered on one of the inspection cards that survived at the ocean floor. Interestingly, among the survivors was Sarah Roth, who also kept a similar card. Along with the restaurant menu compiled a day before the disaster, these cards were sold at a Sotheby's auction in 2000 for $60,000. But rumors circulate that these items brought no happiness to their new owner. And it's not surprising, there is a belief that items lifted from the scene of a tragedy rarely lead to good. The plan of the Titanic, created by the ship design department of the White Star Line Company, is one of the most significant relics associated with this legendary ship. This blueprint is not just a piece of paper, it is the key to understanding one of the most monumental tragedies in maritime history. This plan was used in investigating the details of the Titanic's disaster. Thanks to this blueprint, researchers were able to identify defects in the ship's construction, vulnerable areas, and mistakes made by engineers during its construction. These discoveries not only helped understand the causes of the tragedy, but also contributed to the development of maritime safety. The length of the blueprint is astonishing, a whole 30 feet, emphasizing the grandeur and scale of the Titanic. This plan became a key element in unraveling many mysteries of that fateful night, and its significance is truly hard to overestimate. It's no wonder that this unique blueprint was sold at an auction for an astronomical sum of 308,000 euros. This attests to the deep interest in the history of the Titanic, which continues to live in the hearts and minds of people worldwide. This plan is not just a ship plan, it is a symbol of human audacity, errors, and a tragedy that forever changed the world of navigation. And here is the silk kimono, which, despite its more than a century-old age, holds a remarkable story of survival and human spirit. Its owner, first-class passenger Christina Lucy Dove Gordon, wore it on that fateful night when she left the sinking Titanic. In this kimono, she boarded a lifeboat and was subsequently rescued on board the Carpathia, the ship that came to aid the survivors. This kimono was certainly not the best choice for a cold Atlantic night, but at moments when survival is at stake, clothing choices become secondary. Interestingly, a few years ago, this historical kimono was auctioned where it was sold for an amount ranging from $75,000 to $80,000. The buyer chose to remain anonymous and the proceeds were donated to Lady Dove Gordon's heirs. Why would someone purchase such an unusual item? It's often said that a person is born lucky if they manage to survive a challenging situation. And here, a kimono is which a lady essentially was reborn. Some people chase after such items and are willing to spend incredible amounts of money. These rusty keys, seemingly ordinary at first glance, actually conceal a sad story. They belong to the Titanic's steward Samuel Hemming, whose actions on that fateful night deserve special attention. Captain Edward Smith gave Hemming the order to provide the lifeboats with lanterns, and this happened in the last minutes before the Titanic sank. Despite the realization of the imminent sinking, which was supposed to happen in 30 minutes, Hemming made several raids for lanterns, ensuring that the lifeboats were illuminated, and only then reluctantly jumped into the icy waters of the ocean. Samuel Hemming was a true hero whose actions saved many lives. His keys, the tools of his invaluable contribution to people's rescue, became one of the most unusual artifacts of the Titanic. In 2012, in honor of the centenary of the liner's demise, these keys were auctioned at Christie's and sold for $20,000. Indeed, it's a fair price for items with such a significant history, symbols of human courage and self-sacrifice. And as promised from the very beginning, the story of the binoculars that could have been the cause of the catastrophe. After all, how did they manage to spot the huge iceberg? If only they had binoculars. It is said that before the tragic departure, a scandal occurred. The assistant captain, in anger, left, not leaving the keys to the storage where those very binoculars were kept. But the truth is much darker. In reality, binoculars for the lookouts on the Titanic were not provided at all. Why? Simply put, the lookout's responsibility was to continuously scan the horizon and upon spotting something, ring the bell. Binoculars would only narrow the field of view and take up time. Because upon seeing something unusual, a lookout with binoculars would try to examine it more closely, and his task was to instantly signal. The officer was the one who should use binoculars and make decisions. The principle was confirmed by captains of other ships during the investigation of the Titanic's demise. Captain Bartlett even stated, "Binoculars are a source of danger. They interfere with the work of lookouts." The judge, surprised, asked, "How is that?" Bartlett explained that the lookout's task is simply to search for objects, and evaluating them is already the officer's job. And the version that the Titanic, the majestic ship, perished because of such a trivial thing as a locked storeroom turned out to be unfounded. And although the binoculars later recovered from the ocean floor are not to blame for anything, alas, this tragedy could not have been avoided solely thanks to them. From silk kimonos and rusty keys to ordinary pairs of shoes, each item carries a mystical connection to the past, reviving memories of those who remain forever in the cold waters of the Atlantic. Thank you for watching.